Hey, this is Clayton Olson and
Jack Butler.
And in today's video, we're going to be talking about emotional triggers and particularly emotional triggers in intimate relationships. I mean, I'm sure we can talk about emotional triggers in friendships and maybe even in the workplace. They're pretty similar, right?
Yes.
The way I understand an emotional trigger is it's something that happens, somebody does something, and then rather than responding to them consciously, there's like a reaction that occurs within you and you go on autopilot.
Right. Yeah, typically.
Say more about that,
typically,
please. Yeah.
If you're triggered, you're in a place where you have lost some consciousness.
Okay.
So you're now in some kind of automatic pattern. Typically, you'll go to a place where you feel a bit younger. Typically, you'll go to a place where you feel less powerful. And if we think about the observer, like the part of you that can observe your behavior, called the witness of the observer, that capacity tends to get shut down. So now the automatic reaction is kind of running me, and my range of capacity is diminished.
Gotcha. So when you say the range of capacity, your flexibility to respond in a way that you want,
Yes.
that would serve a particular outcome.
Right.
Like
your choices.
Yeah, like maybe the continuing of the relationship.
Right.
Is diminished where that might not be there. It sounds like you almost get like tunnel vision.
Yes.
And there's only one way to respond. Maybe it even puts you into fight or flight. Could that be possible as well?
Totally, that can be that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, often in this place of diminished choices, we talk about eating memories, right? So it's typically there's something probably from the past that reminds you a bit like this, right? Someone who was unfair to you, someone who was dominating to you, someone who didn't see you, someone who didn't care about your sensitivity, and that is kind of adding to the trigger. You know? So part of staying present is actually not eating memories. It's not bringing all that past stuff up. It's actually just saying, my partner did X, I now feel less empowered. Let me sit with that. What do I notice about that?
Got it. So it's almost like a disproportional amount of meaning that gets brought into this present moment from the past that causes your response to maybe overreact or to interpret something in a way in which a younger you would have interpreted it.
Yes.
So what are a couple examples of how would you know if you're being triggered? What are people commonly triggered over in relationship that you've seen?
Well, there'll be some physiological correlates.
Okay.
So if you're triggered, probably you're going to be breathing more shallowly, more rapidly, right? Which is a bit like your kind of fight-flight response.
Yes.
Probably your attention is pretty narrowed, right?
Okay.
So at this point, you probably can't see the loving nature of your partner. Probably you just see this way that they're trying to hurt you or that they're doing wrong by you. So the attention pattern's narrowed. Probably you're going to feel some kind of stress in your system. I know personally, like often my place of trigger is in my belly. Yeah. Because one of my common trigger responses is fear. So I get fear in my belly. So I'm not feeling very physically comfortable now. Yeah. And probably there's going to be a whole set of inner talk that's happening.
Judgment,
right? Yeah, like why do you
okay.
do this? Like fucking hell. Like probably like for me, there's a kind of place that I'm going to get a bit sweary, a bit judgy, a bit like why is this happening again? And it's a problem and
urgency too.
Yes.
Right. Of like I need to take care of this now. Like something needs to be taken care of.
It's not
like,
right, and I'm going to make it better, different.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then in that sense of urgency, this is where the automatic process or pattern takes hold. And typically it plays out the same way as it did in the past, right? There's either, would you say that when you're being triggered too, there's this sense of stepping into being a victim and making the other person the persecutor?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
So there's a good guy, there's a bad guy, and then
I
there's
think that's pretty likely. Yeah.
A little bit of a power struggle possibly that happens as well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's part of you that's either going to decide, okay, I'm going to sort of roll over and take this somehow, right? So really move into my victim. Or for a lot of us, there's also going to be like a counterplay, right? So now we're going to get tough. Because I don't necessarily want you to know the vulnerabilities that I have or the places that I feel really weak or stressed. So rather than say to you, wow, I feel so disempowered right now, what I'm going to say is, you shouldn't have done that thing. You're wrong. Sort it out. Right. I'm going to get kind of tough, strong, invulnerable.
Throw the energy off. You put it onto them. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to make you wrong. Because if I'm triggered, it's your fault.
Right.
That's the unconscious response to trigger.
Gotcha.
Right?
Gotcha.
You made me feel bad. You did that thing. You're late again. We talked about this. You're late again.
Yeah.
So now I have righteous anger.
Right.
We've talked about it. You're not doing the thing.
Right.
The thing is making me feel a certain way, right?
Yes.
That's an unconscious pattern. Like, no one can really make you feel anything in a certain way, right? So part of the personal responsibility that we can have is to notice, wow, you did a thing, and that might objectively be true. You are late.
Yes.
And that might be a problem. We might need to handle it. And there's a whole thing going on over here that's righteous and judgmental and angry.
And it could be that you're feeling disrespected, that you're not feeling important
Totally.
because your time's not being honored.
Yes.
And all of that
I
meaning.
used to have that so much. Yes.
Yeah, all that meaning gets put on the other person. They're like, wow, they really don't appreciate me as a person.
Yes.
And that's what it means when they're late. And now I'm triggered.
Yes.
Right? And then the other person who is in that situation, possibly the persecutor in the other person's mind, who is late, has the opportunity, well, not the opportunity, but could easily slip into the pattern of counter-triggering.
Yes.
And thinking, how dare this person talk to me like that? Who do they think I am? Right, to talk to me this way, or they're not my dad, right? And then there could be a counter trigger and a rebellion against that.
Yes,
right?
yes. Do you want to talk about counter triggers? Because I think it's an important part of this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So counter trigger is you're getting triggered, and then in response to your trigger, I get triggered. And this is a common sort of slippery slope of relationship. It's a common downward spiral of high functioning behavior to low functioning behavior.
Yes.
A diminishing of capacity again.
Yes.
And a lot of us have to learn how to be with difficult emotion. So if we think of the three principal emotions, anger, fear, and shame, typically one of those will be really hard for us to be with another person. So if another person is freaking out in fear, for some of us that's really hard.
Yeah.
For some other people it's like, oh, you're freaking out. How can I help? For some people, if you get angry, and that was like a thing that was difficult for me in the past, like if people got angry, I wasn't safe, then that pattern's probably going to be pretty hard.
Right.
So rather than your self-talk telling you like how this person's wrong and what you're going to do to punish them or whatever it does, if your self-talk can just narrate to you what's going on, like, oh, she got triggered. Wow, I'm feeling stressed. Yeah. And just to be able to presence that, that can, even on itself, that can start to shift the opportunities that you have in how you respond.
Yes, absolutely. I can pull some examples from my personal experience. In the past, I've been triggered when I've been counter-triggered when I interpret someone else's perhaps emotional outburst or expression as a direct attack and judgment on me.
Yes.
And that may or may not be the truth. But what is the truth is I have a choice about how I respond to that, about whether I am going to draw really firm boundaries and tell the person to fuck off, or shut down and move away, or whether I question and say, well, what if the person's actually not attacking or punishing me?
Yes.
What if this is the only strategy that they have available to them right now, which I'm interpreting as an attack?
Totally.
Which at that point, it really does begin to diffuse that dynamic and pull apart the trigger and take me out of suddenly slipping down this the slope of an automatic negative response that then they can get counter triggered to that as well. Yeah. Right. The counter trigger is it can just be a spiral to nowhere.
Totally.
Yeah.
Well, the thing you're talking about there, we could call that checking it out with the other person. So one way that you could respond there is to say, wow, I'm feeling like I'm being attacked right now. And owning that, like that's just how I feel. I'm not saying
not
you
putting
are,
it on them. Right.
But I want to check that out with you. Like, is any of that happening here? And they might be like, no, I'm not attacking you. Or like they might be like, yeah, honestly, there was a little edge in what I said. Yeah. Now we get to be vulnerable. Now we get to come back into humanity and relationship and connection.
Right. Yes, and presence.
So there's a way that me revealing the deeper contours of my experience has you see me more. Right. And has you see my humanity more, and then allows you to actually be like, oh, there's a human over there that's being impacted by my behavior, and your care and concern can more easily come up.
And in other words, you provide that person who may be being triggered a reflection or a mirror for them to see themselves. So by me not getting counter-triggered by someone's emotional expression or outburst, and being able to reflect back to them what I'm feeling, owning my experience, they then get to check themselves. Yes. Really, they get to see, okay, just like you were saying, there's somebody on the other end of this receiving what's happening, and rather than them being counter-triggered and throwing the ball right back into my court, and now me having a reason to feel attacked or diminished, it's almost like the cycle stops right there.
Yes.
It has the power to.
Yes.
And that takes work, that takes consciousness, that takes practice. Yeah. So as we're talking about some of these solutions and having the presence of mind to be able to notice when you're about to be triggered or counter-triggered, what are some other ways that one can become more solid in the face of their triggers and perhaps bring more presence and more awareness to these things and maybe stop them as they're beginning to unfold? Is there any strategies that you've come across or that you've used on yourself that have worked?
Yes. Well, if I can acknowledge I'm triggered, so part one, I acknowledge that to myself, even if that's just up here. Part two, or stage two, would be that I acknowledge that to you. I'm feeling triggered right now. And then we get an opportunity to decide, well, what do we do with that? Like, can we repair?
Yeah.
So can you, as a partner, if this is an intimate context, as a partner who wants the best of the relationship, if you're not triggered, can you help regulate me, or what we call co-regulate? So can you be like, hey, it's okay, I'm here. What do you need? Let's talk about it.
Yeah.
Let your anger out. If you're angry, that's fine. I can be with that. If that's not available, then we might actually decide to consciously disengage.
Yes.
Like, I'm triggered right now, so probably I'm going to speak bullshit, right? So maybe I should just go and let my system calm down, and then I can re-engage when I've got more capacity.
Yeah.
Because if we think of, you having like a toolbox like this, when you're triggered, your toolbox gets very narrow.
Yes.
So it's hard for you to have an appropriate range of responses.
Yeah.
And that can be a really cool thing. Because if you say I'm triggered and I say, you know what, that's all right, Clayton, go take 30 and let's reconvene. That's a pretty mature relationship behavior.
That is.
Because oftentimes, if I want to make you wrong for your triggered, I could just lay into you there.
Yeah.
Just be like, wow, you're getting triggered again. Or like, oh, you're so sensitive. Or,
Yeah, this is your shit. You need to deal with it.
Right.
Right.
So part of it is realizing that we're a team if we're in a relationship, and we're going to get triggered, and we're there to support our partner's triggers. We don't have to take offensive behavior on the back of our triggers. We might have to hold a boundary and say, hey, I think you're triggered right now. Please stop.
Yeah.
But to actually be like, it's okay that you're triggered, and I'm going to support you back into non-triggerdom.
Yep.
It's pretty cool.
2 points that you made that really are important and worth noting again are, one, that you keep the vision of the relationship in mind while this is all happening. The two of you are not actually against each other, but you're really working towards a common goal.
Yes.
And even in the face of these disagreements and these triggers, when you can realize that you're still on the same team and that you're wanting to support your partner emotionally through whatever's happening, even your own perhaps judgment that might be coming up or your own triggers, there's more of a chance to get through it and get to the other side.
Totally.
And one of those strategies that you mentioned, which is really important, is this idea of conscious disengagement.
Yes.
Meaning that you're not just disengaging and abandoning your partner
well said.
without telling them, hey, look, here's what I'm doing. Because sometimes people will abandon their partner and say, oh yeah, well, I just had to disengage and I'm not going to reward bad behavior. Right. I'm not going to reward bad behavior. And they leave without saying, look, I want you to still feel safe. Right. This is what they're communicating. You might not be saying this specifically, but you might be saying, I need some time. I'm going to take 2 hours. I'm going to call you in 2 hours.
Yes.
Or I will talk to you later tonight about this at 8 o'clock.
Yes.
Rather than just leaving and the other person sitting there hanging, even feeling more unsafe, which could even be a trigger right there, right?
Oh.
Your partner abandoning you.
Totally.
Absolutely. Judgment and criticism and self-worth issues come up.
And objectively, they are kind of abandoning you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I like the thing you're saying about giving a specific time.
Yeah.
Like, I will call you in 2 hours, or we will meet at 7 o'clock tonight. I think that's really helpful for people to feel safe and that there's some certainty amidst the uncertainty of you needing to go.
Well, Jack, thank you for distinguishing and bringing more to the surface these concepts behind emotional triggers. I think a lot of people can benefit from it.
This is big territory.
Yeah, and I mean, almost everybody has some type of trigger, because who grew up with perfect parents and a perfect childhood and a perfect past, right?
Yep.
And the more awareness and consciousness we can bring to these areas in our life where we seem to go on autopilot and automatic, the more power and choice we can show up in every area of our life, including relationships.
Yes, totally.
So if you like this video, go ahead and like it in the bottom corner. If you've got any comments, questions, want to ask us something personally, feel free to write below, and we will see you in the next video.
Good to be with you.
Thanks.